Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am back with another deck tech today. This time, rather than doing modern, I figure we should do something a little different, and this was why I'm going over a standard deck today. This is a standard deck that I built with some of the new cards from Eldritch-Moon. It's, as you can tell, it's a red deck. The reason I wanted to build this deck is because I feel like a lot of people have felt that red hasn't really been a very powerful color in Standard, and I wanted to try to build a deck to showcase the best abilities and best cards of red in Standard at the moment. Although you probably won't see this deck on the Pro Tour, this is actually a fairly budget-friendly deck. It has a lot of cards that really are not that expensive, and the mana base is really not that complicated. It's very cheap, very affordable. If you're looking for a deck that doesn't rely on so many colors or collected company or a lot of humans, this is a deck to go to. Now, to be honest, I haven't really had a whole lot of time to test this deck, so a lot of it's kind of set in stone. I still need to probably adjust a few things here and there to tweak it as to the best of its ability for the current metagame, or at least my metagame. But I feel like so far it's coming along very nicely, and the games I have played with it, it's done pretty well. Because of the new additional cards that came out in Eldritch-Moon, I feel like I was able to make this deck into more of a burn deck, which is actually nice, considering there really aren't that many life gain cards in the format at the moment. So let's introduce you to the creatures of the deck. So starting off with one-drop creatures. Like in Modern, you want to get a one-drop creature out early, because you want your creatures to do most of the work, and this way, if you get a creature early game to stick, it can do a pretty considerable amount of damage, a lot more than most of your burn spells could potentially do. Because we are in Standard, our options are a bit more limited, but there are some really good aggressive creatures in Standard right now, particularly the Village Messenger, which flips into the Moonrise Intruder. If you saw my Modern Burn deck tech list, this was there as well. This is just a great aggressive creature. Flips into a 2/2 with Menace. Really hard to block. Great for being evasive and getting in damage if it flips. One thing I will say is because the mana curve of this deck is a little bit higher than a burn deck in Modern, you won't have to worry about causing it to flip as much. But still, it's something you have to keep in mind, so just be cautious on how you play your spells. Accompanying it is Falkenrath Gorger. We have a full set. It kind of works like a Savannah line or Elite Vanguard most of the time. It's just a good powerful creature for 1 mana, 2/1. It's always been known to be very good for 1 mana, or historically speaking at least. However, you're occasionally going to be able to cast it for its madness cost if you have another one out already, which is a nice little benefit, and it actually happens more often than you might imagine. Still a solid card for a deck like this. It definitely does what we want the deck to do, even though the card itself is not the most aggressive red creature ever printed. It's still not bad for what the deck wants to do. And down here we have our 1 copy of Zerga Bellstriker, just as an additional support creature. Like the Gorger, it does what we want it to do, but it also has the dash ability, which, like I've stated before, gets around things like board wipes, languish in this case. So yeah, it's nice to have. You can run more if you want. I have seen red decks in Standard run more, but I'm not a big fan of running more because they kill each other ultimately. Next up are our 2-drop creatures. As you see at the top row above here, we have our 7 discard outlets, and we do run quite a few spells with Madness. So having these outlets does give us some value off of that, and you can actually get quite a big power boost. I'm starting to really love the Fury Blade Vampire. It just, basically, if you got a Madness card, it just gives you so much value, so much power. Also, I just love it because it's more powerful than the Bloodseeker. Bloodseeker's not bad. It basically just gives us what we want to do because, like I say, we have so many Madness cards. And because these guys get just so much power off an activation, it's just really good, and it does exactly what we want it to do, considering they just go hand in hand. You can run 8, but I think 7 works just fine. It's been working great for me. A lot of players, I feel like, consider these guys to be a little bit underwhelming, but honestly, they're actually really wonderful in a deck like this. Beneath here, we have the Abbot of Kralkeep, which is not going to be in Standard a whole lot longer, but he's mainly there just as creature that can potentially get bigger from all our instants and sorceries, and he gets us a card, and getting a card is always sweet. You are probably going to want to cast him after you've cast most of the other cards in your hand. This way, you're more than likely going to be getting a card that you can actually play. So just keep that in mind when you do play him. Up next, we have the burn spells, and honestly, I really like these burn spells, even though they're probably not the most efficient burn spells ever printed. But still, they're a lot of fun to play with. Starting at the top left, we have the new member of the crew here, the Incendiary Flows. Just basically, this is what the doctor ordered. We just wanted an additional 2 mana, do 3 damage to creature or player burn spell, and it's just solid. Does what we want it to do. Gets rid of all the 3 toughness creatures, and with the added benefit, we get the Pillar of Flame effect, which allows it to exile a creature if it were to die within the same turn. Moving on here, we have another card that's going to be leaving Standard pretty soon, Exquisite Firecraft. I really love this card. Wonderful against blue decks. Just gets the job done. Really powerful. Just, what more is there to say? Going beneath the top row of cards, we have our Madness Suite here. These are the cards you want to pitch with your Vampire Berserkers, the Ravenous Bloodseeker and the Fury Blade Vampire. Although this card hasn't seen a whole lot of play, Avacyn's Judgment is actually quite nice, particularly nice against small creatures. However, late game, if you're able to cast it with Madness, you can do a lot more than enough damage to kill than more than just weenies. It can do pretty substantial damage. Fire Temblor is always nice as well. 3 damage for 3 mana isn't horrible, but it's not great. However, if you get it for Madness, it essentially becomes a Lightning Bolt. Kind of wondering if I should be trying this out in Modern with some discard outlets. Just have to kind of figure out what discard outlet to use. But anyway, like I say, because you run so many discard outlets, it's really easy to cast Fiery Temper for 1 mana, and it's a solid card. Beneath here is a copy of Collective Defiance. I actually run 4, but I've been testing with proxies at the moment. So I only really have 1 copy, but I do run 4. This card is just solid. Honestly, I know that I haven't been playing this deck that long, but this card has been solid for me. Mainly I use it for damage. I really haven't used it too much to do the Wheel of Fortune effect, but still it's really, really fun, really effective. Like the Firecraft, gets rid of a big 4 toughness creature, and it can kind of be a Searing Blaze at times if you pay 4 mana into it. But it just does what the deck wants it to, and it's solid. But just a reminder, I do play 4. I just have 1 copy. Actual copy, I just have to use proxies whenever I sleeve up. As I stated before, the mana base is painfully simple. It's 19 mountains and 1 Hanweir Battlements. And in the main deck, we mainly use this as a basically a little booster to give our creatures haste, because late game, you're going to have that extra mana. You might as well give some value out of that mana that you don't necessarily would have a use for, so giving a creature haste is really nice. You might be wondering, hey, why are we not running the Hanweir Garrison in the main deck? That card's really good with Hanweir Battlements because then they can meld together. Well, truth be told, we actually do run 3 in the sideboard, just to kind of keep up with some decks that could potentially have a lot of little creatures, or a deck that has very few blockers, considering the tokens are pretty tough to block, and you probably will get some damage in there. But they're mainly there for those reasons. The rest of the sideboard consists of 4 sets of cards. For control matchups, we have the Scab Clown Berserker, which is a hasty 2/2 with a kind of like Eidolon of the Great Revel effect for your opponent only, which is great, but it does have to be renowned to get it, so you do have to hit your opponent at least once. Still a wonderful card. I've actually been using this card for quite some time against control decks, and it's a wonderful card. I've actually been using this card quite a bit against control decks, and it actually does give them quite a bit of a headache. Not just in this deck, I've used it in others before. Now I kind of have here, these 2 sets are mainly to deal with big nasty threats. Roast is to take out the big 5-body creatures, and Active Treason is there to basically take care of anything larger like Eldrazi's and whatnot. Depending on the meta, this may change, but right now I'm just kind of want to have that safety net at the moment. I still need to test this deck a little more, but right now I'm just being extra precautious. So some people may say that this may be too much to deal with this group of creatures, but still, I just want to play it safe for the moment. I probably will change it. One change you can make is if you know there are going to be life-gaining creatures or spells, you can always run a Tarkus command, but you do have to run green. Sadly, there really isn't a really good dual land for a deck like this because most of the lands that you will see in the format right now that are dual lands come into play tapped, and that's something this deck does not want. And so that was the deck tech of the, I guess you could say it, the standard burn deck. At the moment, it's not, I wouldn't really quite call it a burn deck, at least it doesn't feel like a modern or legacy burn deck. It just feels like an aggressive red deck. I guess call it red aggro, I suppose. Like I said, this is a wonderful standard deck if you love playing red, and considering there's not too much life gain in standard, it's kind of few and far in between, this does seem like a fairly viable deck in a sense. I feel like it does have some potential, unless for some reason the meta goes entirely life gain on your ass. If you love red, or if you love a budget deck, this is also a really fun deck to play. Feel free to let me know what you think about this deck in the comment section below. If you have any suggestions, feel free to leave them there as well. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and roast that subscribe button. It does mean a lot. My name is Respector, and I'll see you all next time.